Hey everybody, it's Emily with Hearty Soul. Welcome back to the channel. Today I've got my sewing machine out and I want to show you how to draft your own pattern using your favorite items in your closet. So maybe it's a favorite shirt or a favorite pair of shorts that you just can't find again in a store. Perhaps you thrifted it and you're like, I love this shirt so much, I wish I had it in so many different other fabric options and color varieties. So today I'm going to show you step by step how to draft your own pattern, something that you can keep forever and use again and again to create your next favorite shirt. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is determine what is your favorite shirt or what is your child's favorite piece of clothing, and then that's what we're going to use to create a pattern and then sew a brand new piece of clothing. So for instance, my daughter wanted a new pair of shorts for Easter, so I had her go to her closet, her drawer, and find me her favorite pair of shorts that I know fit her. So she came out with this pair of shorts. And it's super cute, has an elastic waist, pockets, and then a tie front. Although I did not replicate the tie front because we were short on time. But I took this pair of shorts and created a pattern and then made this pair of shorts for her to wear for Easter. So this pair of shorts does have two pockets on this side, and I know that it fits her really well because her other pair of shorts fit her really well. Went to my closet and we found a shirt that will fit all three of us that we really liked and that would be easy enough to replicate and make in several different coordinating patterns. And so this is the shirt that we made a pattern from for this Easter. So although I already have a pattern for this shirt, I'm going to walk you through the steps of drafting your own pattern from your very own piece of clothing. We're going to use this shirt today. Another one that I had in my closet that I really like. It's inside out because I was going through the steps earlier. But this is the shirt, the top, that I really like, and I wanted to replicate that into different fabric and a different pattern. So let's get started. Okay, a couple little things that I wanted to mention when it comes to selecting an item of clothing and then also selecting the fabric that you want to make a new garment with. The one thing that you'll want to note is the elasticity of the fabric that you're choosing in the garment that you already have. Take this one for example. It has a little bit of give. It's not like 100% cotton. It has a little bit of stretch, right? The fabric that I made it into is cotton. There is no stretch, which means we need to make sure that we have accommodations for getting the item on and over your head. That means that this has to have a slit. The neck hole has to be bigger so that you can get it on and over your head. You can accommodate for this if you're going from a super stretchy, say a knit fabric, and you've created your pattern from that top and you've made it into cotton. You can accommodate this by adding an enclosure in the back, or in the case of this top, I added a little bit of elastic on the inside of this tank top, and same with this. I think that the fact was that this neckline was way too low for me and I wanted to cinch it in a little bit. But you can also use a little bit of elastic if you're going from a knit shirt down to a non-stretchy cotton fabric. You can use a little bit of elastic, or you can use a buttonhole enclosure. So, all right, once we've determined which article of clothing that we want to make another replica from, then what I like to do is to create pattern pieces using just some brown craft paper. You could also use tissue paper, but I like to create a pattern so that just in case this turns out well, I already have a pattern ready to go to create another one. So what I do when I first look at an article of clothing is I turn it inside out. I need to determine how many pattern pieces I need to create with this article of clothing. So by turning it inside out, I can identify all of the seams that make up this piece of clothing. All right? When we're looking at this piece of clothing, I can identify 4 different pieces that make up this pattern. And I know that because there's a seam here, a seam here, seam here. So this is one piece. This sleeve is one piece. And then the back is one whole piece. The first thing I do is I take this. Now, this paper is not quite big enough. You can get full sheets of paper. I just choose to keep using this, and I either tape the pieces together or I make notes on it suggesting how much longer the piece needs to be. If you're using a rolled up piece of paper, a little insider tip is you can iron this paper and it will become flat. But I start with this and I just make it a little bit wider than the actual piece I'm working with. I'm just going to cut myself a piece of paper to start my pattern with. I'm going to lay it underneath. So the first piece that I'm going to create is this back piece. As you can see, the back bottom is a little bit shorter than the front bottom. And it just has its own little intricacies. I believe that this piece is also more narrower than the front piece. As you can see, this overlay of the front piece here. So I'm just sort of noticing and making some mental notes as I go through this. Slide this underneath here. And I'm just gonna go to where the top of this pattern piece would start, okay? Then I take my pencil and I always add a 1/2 inch on to every piece that I prepare as a pattern, because that 1/2 inch is what you need in order to have a seam allowance for all seams. That's at very least. If you want to add more just for your comfort level, please do that. But I like to add a 1/2 inch at least. So this is the top of my garment, and this is where the top part of my pattern piece exists. So this is an easy piece because I can just trace this, and then I add a 1/2 inch on to that. Okay, so I'm just gonna take this, sort of eyeball it a 1/2 inch wider here. Okay. If you're not comfortable with eyeballing, feel free to get your tape measure out as many times as you need to get comfortable. Okay. And that's going to go right up like that. Okay. Then this is our top piece. So I want a 1/2 inch beyond this seam here. Okay. So that would go right about here. So mark right here as the top piece that includes our seam allowance. Then what I'm going to do is go down to the lower half of this section here, and I know that this is going to have to come off a 1/2 inch from here, and I'm just going to make a mark here. Okay. Now, there are devices, there are clothing pattern devices, angles and whatnot that will help you create this curve here. I just tend to eyeball this, okay? I sort of do this so I'm understanding the angle or the shape to sort of practice my drawing here. The next thing I want to do while I'm here is take a 1/2 inch in addition to this side, right? I'm going to come down here like this, because this is where it corners here, and then it starts to go straight down, okay? So once I move this arm like this, I can now create my swoop, my angle. Okay, and I'm just sort of going from point A to point B where my markings are there to create this line, okay? So we've got our first side done. So then what I'm gonna do is find the center of our pattern. And here, it's right about here, okay? And because I know that this side is going to be symmetrical with this side, all I need to do is fold this pattern in half. Now, when I cut this out, both sides will be symmetrical. I can get rid of those pieces. All right, let's lay this back down. Now you might have a full sheet of paper, and if you do, it's probably easier, but I don't. So when I get to this point and I know that there's more to this pattern that I need to know about, I just take my tape measure and I measure from up here all the way down to the bottom, which says 21.5. If I added that 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I will need that for the bottom hem, that goes to 22. So what I do is I now move this over and I make notes. I want to say that this goes from here to here, and this is 22 inches. Also, while I'm here, I'll say orange top, and this is the back, and we're going to cut one. Then what we also need to mark is how far down this part of the pattern goes. So if I take this and measure, we're going to go down 12.5 inches, adding that 1/2 inch seam allowance on the bottom. So I'm just going to write on here, this needs to go down 12.5 inches. So that I'm measuring on my fabric, I know that I need this much fabric in order to create this back piece. All right, so now also make sure to label, because you get all these pieces cut and you're gonna be like, what is that? Is that the front or the back, or what is that? Sometimes I just like to draw and just make notes, like this is the tag, so that I know it's the back, this is the center. If you did this on a fold, you could use that fold. This side is also going to be, obviously it's symmetrical, 12.5 inches, and then all of this needs to go down to 22. All right, so we've got our back piece cut out. Let's do our front piece next. Lining up my top piece with the top of my pattern. So this piece comes to about here, comes to about there. After that here, making note of how low this scoops here. So I will add 1/2 inch to this neckline here to create this curve. In the end, then we will split this, but for now, we're going to create this curve here. All right, so just like we did on the back, I just want to get everything as flat as possible. And then I make a mark on the back here, add my 1/2 inch. All right, so that's at the top. Then down here, make my mark, then add 1/2 inch. Okay. And then add my 1/2 an inch going down here, over here, my top, okay, add a 1/2 of an inch there, kind of make that corner so I know, go down here, add my 1/2 of an inch down here. Again, we're going to just do one side, we're going to determine the center, we're going to fold it in half, and then the other side will be symmetrical. Then we need to determine where the neckline is here, so I'm going to put my tape measure here where I believe is the center here, add a 1/2 of an inch, and then just sort of mark it with my thumb and pull it back with my finger and mark that center there. Now I can remove this, draw in my, connect my dots here, okay, connect my neckline here, okay, and then I know that this is my center, so I'm going to do just like we did on the back piece, find our center line here, right here, crease that there, make sure that this is even, like that, and then make a crease. Then cut it out. So then when we open this up, okay, we're going to call this our front piece of the orange shirt, and we need to cut 1. So let's quickly make our measuring notes. 12.5 inches. Just gonna make a note here. So it's 12.5 inches, which is great because that's exactly what the other piece shows up to be. That matches up. This way also takes up less paper. We've got our front and we've got our back piece. Let's do a sleeve. And we know that both sleeves are gonna be the same, so we only need to create one pattern for our sleeve. Cut an appropriate piece of paper. Start with this sleeve here. Now this sleeve, we can create a pattern piece that has a fold on it because this sleeve is all one piece all the way around. So we're going to start down here, seams on both the front and the back so that I know I've got the perfect shape. Okay. And then I'm going to mark 1/2 of an inch out here. That's where my 1/2 of an inch is. And then a 1/2 of an inch off of here would be about here. Sort of making my diagram there. And then we need a 1/2 of an inch off of this in order to create that hem. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of connect my dots here. Okay, got that sketched in. And then up here, same thing. Okay, so I'm just sketching this in, adding my 1/2 of an inch as we go along here. This sort of does like this. Okay, that kind of curve there, and then this comes like that. And this corner we'll have to just add on because we do need a little corner there. And you can use that other patterns to help you with the curve. You want to know what the lineup is. You can use your other pattern pieces to help you with that curve. Yep, I was right. This is a little bit too curved. And because we know that we need this all to come together and fit together, I'm going to use this curve here that we've determined. Just trace this curve here. Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, now I want you to keep in mind, you are a human person, not a machine creating a piece of article of clothing. You are a person who makes mistakes and is not perfect. So when you're putting this pattern together, when you're sewing this pattern, realize that it's not going to be perfect, but that's sort of the sweetness of it, don't you think? I think that it's the imperfection is why I love to do what I love so much. So when you're making mistakes and you're like, I know that's not perfect, that curve isn't perfect, doesn't have everything, it's okay. You can always do it again, you can always try again, and you're going to make mistakes, but that's sort of the best part of all of this, okay? All right, let's keep going. We've got our sleeve here. We're gonna call this sleeve for our orange top. This is gonna be on a fold for sure. And we are going to cut 2 of these, okay? Take all your notes, and then you can cut it out. Okay, so I want to start always with the biggest piece of fabric. And that is because I want to make sure I have enough fabric when I get done. So I start with the biggest piece, and of course, because we have measurements and not all of the paper pattern, I have to measure. So again, from here to here needs to be 12.5. So that's here, but this from here to near needs to be 22 inches. I'm going to bring this down, stitch, I'm going to line this right up to the edge here to make sure I utilize my fabric as best as possible. So this needs to be 22. I'm going to give it just a little bit more there. 22, okay. And here, once I get my pattern in position, and I mark my 12.5 because it is a little bit taller. I'm going to take my pins here and pin my pattern piece to the fabric. You don't have to do this, it's a little extra step, but it just makes sure that everything stays in place while we're cutting. So I know that this side is straight, that's flat, that's perfect, where I need it to be. Over here, I'm just using the straight edge of the pattern to tell me where to go. So got our back piece all cut out. Now I'm gonna leave this pattern piece pinned to this just so that while I'm doing all of this, I don't get mixed up as to which pieces are for what. Okay, so we've got our front piece cut out, and next we just need to do 2 sleeves. Okay, so once we get everything cut out, then we're going to sew all of these pieces together. So you can take some tips again from the first garment that you patterned from, and you can see all of the seams and all of the hems and where everything needs to connect. And if you have basic sewing skills, you should be able to connect all of these pieces together, but I'll walk you through how I'm going to do this top. Okay, so first thing, here was the front of our shirt. Okay, and this is the back. And what I'm noticing here, and the way I'm going to sew and pin all of this together and then sew, is that the sleeve is really also part of the neckline here. So before I can sew and hem this neckline, I have to put the front and the back seams of these front and back and sleeves all together. So that's what I'm going to start with first. Garment. So I'm going to just lay my pieces here like this. These are right sides together again. And I'm just going to start pinning my way down the front part of the sleeve all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to do the same over here with the back side. Okay, so now, and do the same to the other sleeve, I'm going to sew all of these fronts and backs of the sleeve together. Really see this. I like to cut all my threads as I go along. Okay, so it was kind of hard to visualize how this was going to come together earlier, but can you see it now? Is it easier? So here are our sleeves. We still have a side seam that's open that we need to close together, which is going to be our next move. Let's put it on the table and look at it a little closer. Okay, can you see it now? Is it easier to see? So this is our front. Here we've got our sleeve. We are going to sew the side seam next, but here our sleeves are both attached in. You can also see that this top of our sleeve is going to be part of our neckline. So this maybe could have been a little bit more rounded, and we can do that. We can still round that out a little bit more. I might just cut a little rounded area here instead of this jagged area. But this is our neckline, and we will hem that at the end. We'll also end up at the end, we'll hem our sleeve ends and then also our bottoms as well. So the next step we're going to do is turn this back right sides together, and we're going to sew our side seams next. All right, so I'm just going to sew down here from the sleeve, connecting the bottom pieces of the sleeve, and then sew all the way down the side seam. Now feel free to pin all of that if you like. I'm just going to pin the top here and right here in this center piece here. Okay, at this point you can press all of these seams out, but I like to press at the end. So the next thing we're going to do is finish and hem our sleeves, our neckline, and the bottom of this top. And let's remember that the front of this specific top that we're replicating has a split front. So we're going to want to do that before we finish the hem on the top. Okay, so we're going to determine where the center point is on this piece by simply folding it in half and finding the center that way. And then I just make a little slit, open back up, and we've got our center line here. I'm just going to follow the gingham pattern straight down for as deep as I want that. Let's say like that. Now we can finish this by simply rolling a hem like this and sewing this. So we're going to sew this all in one circle. So I'm going to start from here all the way around this neckline and all the way here until this is my stopping point. Okay, I'm just going to start with pressing all of the sleeves nice and flat. Right, so once you press all of the seams open and you press all of the hems nice and flat, you can go ahead and try it on. So this is what it looks like full length, back. I love how it fits. I love, well, because I know how it fits, because I have a shirt just like it that I love. And I love that it's, you know, this specific top is easy to tuck into my jeans or out. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to like it, subscribe for more videos just like this. Maybe you want to share it with a friend who's been dying to make something like this, and follow along for more. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great week.